Welcome. Thank you very much for coming out tonight on this lovely spring evening. I'm Mimi Luttrell. I'm the chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission and a member of the Open Space and Recreation Plan Working Group. We have enlisted the help of 2 graduate students from the Conway School to help us in this endeavor. Helmi Hooney and Allison Grimlady. Also in the working group are Frederica Gillespie, who from the Open Space and Preservation Commission, also the Commission's appointee to the Stewardship Committee and the Community Preservation Committee. Michelle Simoneau from the Conservation Commission. Dawn Morris, the chair of the Planning Board. Jess Stein from the Planning Board. Craig Nicholson from the Recreation Commission. Sally Waters from the Southborough Open Land Foundation. Dan Franks from the Trails Committee. Dan Guilford from the Trails Committee. Doreen Ferguson, the Recreation Director. Bob Sykes from the DPW and our GIS specialist. And Beth Rosenblum, the Conservation Commission Administrator. And we also have the Southborough Access Media recording tonight, so you can see this again at your viewing pleasure. Refreshments are here. And you guys want to?
Great.
Take it away.
So we'll have a brief presentation explaining what an OSRP is, why it's important to the town of Southborough. And then we'll turn it back over to Mimi and Doreen, who will talk about the last OSRP, which was written in 2009. By the way, there are copies on the back table if you're interested in looking at that plan. And what's happened since then, what's been accomplished, what's still in the works. After that, we will move over to the tables. We'll have maps on the tables. And we have a series of questions. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that part. We're trying to get a sense from all of you what's important to the community and what you're hoping to preserve.
After that, we'll just stay over in that area for a while. A few of us will be up at those boards, kind of hearing back from all of you. Each table will kind of appoint a note taker for the group to relay information that you've all gathered back to us at the end of the session. So sessions will be about 20 minutes in those breakout groups. And then we'll kind of just be condensing all that information in the report back to the full house. And after that, we'll kind of work towards creating goals out of those, all of that information that we've gathered. So we'll stay over there and we'll just ask each of you to kind of come up with ideas that you're looking to work towards. And so that's generally why we're here today, to help inform, to help the working group figure out how to create the next 7-year action plan for the OSRP.
Anything to add? All right, everyone get going? So what is an open space and recreation plan? An open space and recreation plan is a planning document that summarizes the town's natural and cultural resources, the open space and recreation goals, and an action plan to help the town meet those goals. So it includes an environmental analysis, so things like wildlife in the area, natural resources, water resources, soils, that kind of thing, to help inform the town to create effective conservation goals. It also includes a section on community setting, so history of the community, regional context, economic and social factors, an inventory of open space lands. So these are the lands that are currently protected in the town. It also gives the town the opportunity to list lands that may be of conservation priority for the future. And lastly, the goals and the action plan. So as Helmi said, we're looking to get your input on what the town's goals are this evening. And then the working group will work together to create an action plan for how to implement those goals.
And why is this important to Southborough? Essentially, the OSRP can help Southborough to identify conservation priorities so that the town can make thoughtful decisions not only about conservation but also about development. And we'll identify recreation needs and goals and figure out ways to meet them. And it generally just provides an opportunity to engage the community in a conversation about development, conservation, and recreation. And the final document is really a living document and can help the town to apply for state fund grants to move things forward.
So tonight we'll be using this time to gather information from you, and then the working group will use this information to determine priorities and the action plan items that will go into the ultimate OSRP update. So the goals from the 2009 RSRP, to create additional conservation areas and recreational facilities to serve the needs of Southborough residents while protecting limited natural resources. To expand trail and sidewalk systems on conservation and town-owned land for passive recreation and pedestrian use. To create partnerships and agreements with local partners and private landowners for conservation recreation lands. To provide outreach and education programs. To identify and preserve the best use of the land. Involve residents in the management of open spaces. And to prioritize and establish mechanisms for protecting critical parcels of land. So what's happened since then? And now I'll turn it back over to Mimi.
We've made some great accomplishments since the plan was last updated in 2009. The Triangle Park, which is located at Southville, Corderville, and River Streets, has been completed, and that's a huge improvement in that area. There's been a lease on the 9/11 field that it's been approved through the state legislature, and agreements have been signed with the Department of Conservation Recreation. A tot lot has been created at the South Union School. Lights are being replaced at all the school fields, so they can be utilized at nighttime. And the community garden, which used to be on Middle Road, has been moved over to the Breakneck Hill Conservation Land, and additional plots have been made available. We've brought in many experts and have held walks at numerous sites throughout the town. We've had bird walks and mushroom walks and bumblebee walks, butterfly walks. A sidewalk committee has been created, and they have completed a plan. Do you want to speak to that, Doreen?
We actually just finished up and we submitted the final results to DPW. So the way we got together, we listed out all of them and created a matrix. We based it on, location. Where were the sidewalks going to take you? Is there a certain location? Is it taking you to the library? Is it taking you to the school? That was one of the items. The other was, the frontage. Is it easy to get a sidewalk in there? Can we? Is there too many trees? Do we have the right of way? And all those sorts of things. So we created a huge matrix. We prioritized the locations, and we handed them over to DPW so Karen Galligan can get started on her work. So it was very successful and worked very well.
The Trails Committee has been created, and they have formalized agreements with state agencies for the continued use of state properties, and they're working on the accessibility and visibility of trails in town. Dan, would you like to add anything on trails? You don't have to. I don't want to.
I think the most important thing is the Sudbury Reservoir Trail. It's assigned. MWRA has signed over their parcel so that we can maintain it and we can enhance it. The DCR, we're just waiting for it to be signed.
Yeah.
And that's basically the trail that runs the entire length of the aqueduct. And what that allows us to do is hook up for the future of what's known as the Burrows Trail, which would be like an emerald or a charm bracelet that would go through Westboro, Marlboro, Southboro, and Northboro.
And there are, after we break out, you can look at the maps there has trails on. And we're at the conclusion of a project that it has created a database of all the open space created through the subdivision process, and the database has links to the plans and all the deeds and all the decisions all in one spot. And along with that, all the deeds have been researched, and the level of protection of the open space in the subdivisions has been determined, and we have been given recommendations on how to best protect subdivision open space moving forward. The Trails Committee has created a website, and there are trail maps available on their website and also on the Conservation Commission website. We spoke about the trail, the walks. There has been a Friends of Recreation group created. Anything to add on that?
The Southborough Friends of Recreation was created about 10 years ago. They, their major fundraiser is the Gobble Wobble, and proceeds from the fundraising have gone towards scholarships for the kids, for the programs, residents. It'll be going towards 2 projects that we're replacing 2 playgrounds, the Finn Playground and then the Fay Memorial Playground over on Central Street. So they do contribute quite a bit, and they work really hard to help us out with any extra activities we like to give back to the community. So.
The Southborough Open Land Foundation has held many workshops on invasive species. We hold an annual Big Night event on Oregon Road, where we safely usher wood frogs and salamanders across Oregon Road to the vernal pool on Oregon Road. A science class at Fay School raised beetles under the direction of a former Concom member, and these beetles eat purple loosestrief, which is an invasive that chokes out the resident plant communities and wetlands. We have held events and coordinated with the Southborough Open Land Foundation and the trustees of reservations at both Beals Preserve and Chestnut Hill Farm. One such event at the Beals Preserve, we had a tracking event where we learned to identify wildlife tracks in the snow. A wildflower garden and a pollinator garden have been created at the Breakneck Hill Cow Fund. Also, bumblebee research has been conducted there. Would you like to speak to that, Freddie?
I'm Freddie Gillespie of the Open Space Preservation Commission and the Stewardship Committee. And just on the bumblebee project, I just wanted to make a quick announcement that there will be presentations coming up probably in May and another one before that in April on the pollinator habitat. We have partnered with a professor at WPI, and we have 1 year a bumblebee survey going on. And based on the results of that, it influenced the state wildlife action plan that determines how federal funds are spent and other state monies are spent. And before, some of this input wasn't solely based on our research, but in part because of that, they changed listing species of bumblebees that are extirpated from the state, so there's nothing we can do about it, to they're here at Breakneck Hill. So it was one of the evidence that these bees are here, they're in trouble, and now they're listed as a threatened species in that wildlife action plan. More research is going on. That survey is going to continue again this year. It's expanding. It looks at the connection between bumblebees and native plants and introduced flowers, as well as now it's expanding to look at butterflies and other pollinators, and partnering with some folks at the Mass Wildlife to do bird surveys. So this is a huge success. It's going to give us a lot of information, not just for Southborough, but for the state and the region as well. And before I participated in this, I thought bumblebees were bumblebees. I didn't know there were 20 species that you would have not that long ago expected to have found at Breakneck Hill. Or maybe there were 12, but right now we were lucky to find 6, and 3 of them are on their way out. So this is just a point that, some of the work we do, why we protect open space and how we manage it, we're experiencing extinction here now. It's not in the rainforest, it's not in Africa, it's happening in our own backyards and in our own town. So this is something that's giving us information. And when you see the dates of the presentation, we're partnering with the library and maybe some other folks. Pay attention, and we'll be advertising that when we get the dates settled. Thank you.
We have an active stewardship committee, which is working on updating a management plan from the Breakneck Hill conservation land. And the stewardship committee has also created a forest stewardship plan for the town forest. And a Metro West regional open space connectivity plan has been developed. So along with the accomplishments, there have been some lost opportunity. There's been no priority parcel protected in the town since the 2009 Open Space and Rec Plan update. Also, of the top 10 priority parcels for recreation potential and wildlife habitat, approximately 500 acres has been lost to development. So this highlights the importance of having a plan, and so we can be proactive in protecting parcels moving forward.
So thank you for your attention, everyone. As you've heard, quite a bit has been accomplished since the last OSRP was written, and we're looking for your input in order to make the next version of the OSRP as effective as possible, and make it reflect the values and the vision that you all have for your community. So at this point, we'd like to ask everyone to move over to the round tables. On each table, there is a list of questions. There's also a large map of Southborough, and these questions were essentially asking, we're hoping to facilitate a discussion amongst you about what you'd like to preserve in the town.
And we'll be around to answer any questions that you have.
As will the rest of you. Great, thank you all so much for all of your feedback. I heard a lot of great conversations walking around the room. It would be great if every table could kind of appoint a spokesperson to let us know what you've all been talking about, and then we're going to take notes up on these big white easels. And then Freddie, I think, is going to be kind of marking on the map the places that you identify. So would any table like to go first? Share back what you... Yeah, you want to go first? Great.
So the favorite places that we had quite a few. Breakneck Hill was one of them. This is a spelling bee. Out of trouble. Chestnut Hill. The trails behind 9/11 Field. The Sudbury Reservoir Trail. The Bay Circuit Trail. St. Mark's Soccer Field and cross-country trails.
St. Mark's what?
There's soccer fields and then their cross-country trails. So it's kind of, I think, weave in and end up out on City Hut. Callahan State Park, the Buffs, even though it's not in California. The Bay School Soccer Field. Mooney Field. Yeah. The tennis courts at Finn and Neary. Yeah. And the Beals Preserve.
Awesome.
Were there any issues of contention with any of the sites that you guys discussed? I'm sorry? Were there any issues of contention or worries about any of those sites?
You know, we didn't talk about those sites. We had some issues or
Sure.
concerns, but
Yeah, that's
not
fine.
related to those sites.
That's fine.
fine,
Do you want
too.
those?
Yeah.
So some spaces aren't protected from development that should be.
Yep.
Open space within developments needs to be protected with CRs.
Within development?
Yeah, within development. So, you know, a developer leaves some space for open space, but then that area doesn't end up being protected.
Yep.
And then when planning developments, the open space bylaws need to be followed.
Okay, any others?
You know,
So I heard some overlaps with kind of like needs and wants from what you were saying. Are there any other needs and wants?
we had
that
some
you
ones,
discussed? Uh-huh.
biking trails, more sidewalks, water access to the reservoir for non-motorized boats, and composting areas.
Can I get a clarification? When we say biking trails, are we talking off-road, like mountain bike? Both?
Road, so like bike lanes, like areas.
Bike lanes and off-road.
Anything else that you want to make sure gets covered?
Off-road, then you get into a problem as to how that impacts the environment.
Yeah, so we keep it on road then.
All right, anything else this group wants to share?
No?
I'll just throw one out there for, I'm going to say adult soccer fields. I have a personal interest in that. I'm totally biased, but making sure that that fields that are available to people of all age groups.
Thank you guys. Which group would like to go next? Renee? Great.
Bike trails, check. Kayak access. I can interpret where you want to put it. Maintenance of all athletic and baseball fields.
Is that because you feel like none of those places are being maintained properly?
With the caveat, this is we know a big one on the wish list as in a big ask, which is an indoor recreation facility of some sort. And then we got a short list of learning more about options for conservation parcels,
Okay.
whether they be trails or complete conservation, and I'll throw out a couple. And we marked it on this map, actually. So there's a couple of parcels near Trottier and Neary, which we marked. If you want, we can just hand you this map later.
That would be great if you don't mind.
Yeah, in that case, the rest of this is really very specific areas for finding out. The one big one that nobody was sure of is figuring out who owns the title to the land between Gilmore and Coslin Drive, because there's a nice green parcel there. But that's where the trolley trail is supposed to go. There seems to be a trail in there, and it seems to be a very big parcel without any roads in it.
So you identified a bunch of specific parcels that you're hoping to conserve.
Either conserve or just figure out who owns it.
Figure out who owns it, kind of explore the possibilities. Okay.
Oh, that's CMC, isn't it?
That's the
Yeah.
suburb, I think that's SVT's conservation.
The ear part, the person does the ear part. There's also an airfield there.
That part of his airfields back there, there's a lot of things, but there's no roads back there, and I'm wondering how much land is owned by whom.
No.
Did your group have any issues of contention that you wanted to bring up?
Well, that's an arrow that goes way over there, that's misleading, isn't it? That's a huge, big,
And any particular places that you wanted to add to this list, or do you feel like this one was pretty comprehensive?
A place of interest, place that we want to use or are using?
A place you already use that's
No, we
particular.
would focus more on places we want.
Okay, that's fine. That's also very helpful. Yeah, thanks for your input. Does this team have a spokesperson?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
So issues of contention, I don't know if this becomes a contention, but there is a request for more accessibility for dogs in some of the
Yeah.
areas. There's not enough parking places for the the open spaces there are. There's more signage needed, so you know that you actually arrived at the open space that you're looking for. And also just kind of directing people. There needs to be more waste bins. Even places like the reservoirs where you're not supposed to have food or drink. As someone was saying at the table, fishing and beer drinking go together, and often the beer cans are left behind. We also brought up the idea of being able to kayak on the reservoirs if you can swim. I don't know why fishing is considered different from some of the other things that people could do. They don't seem to be any more polluting than fishing. It would be nice, I don't know where this goes, but I guess needs or wants trails that go entirely around some of the reservoir area, so you could make a loop.
Around the reservoir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the only place to add in here, somebody mentioned the town forest. And what was it called? Nichols Road. There's a fire road that's near the end of Nichols Road. Is that what you said? That was like this.
It's actually the Bay Circuit Trail.
It's a Bay Circuit Trail.
Okay, thank you. Does this table want to? Sure.
Favorite places were Breakneck Hill, Chestnut Hill, Beals Preserve, and the Reservoir Trails. In particular, dog walking at Breakneck Hill came up.
Dog, yeah.
Yep. With, I guess, other things we talked about that were sort of iconic things. The views in Chestnut Hill and Breakneck Hill, also Burnett House. That it just is a neat piece of character for the town, and then the other open fields that are still unprotected, and that's maybe a concern one or a want one, but seeing more conservation of the other open fields, the Malay Field on Deerfoot, the fields on Johnson Road and Old North Borough Road. That came up.
Can you say those two once more?
Johnson Road and Old North Borough Road, the open fields over there.
And what are you looking for?
Conservation of them. They're some of the only large pieces of good agricultural land that's left that's not protected. And the big change or another big change that has happened since 2009 is Chestnut Hill becoming activated by the trustees and growing food, which was really popular this year, but they're pretty sure she's going to max out the land base, and those fields are the only additional land that could be used for agriculture in that area. That there's a lot of growth still, but not that much. And I should disclose for those of you who don't know, I live over there, and she is my wife. So there's a little bit of self-interest, although not directly self-interest. But I mean, it's those fields are those fields, and they're the last agricultural fields that are unprotected still.
And you said the Malay Field on...
The Malay Field is on Deerfoot, sort of across to the back entrance to Trotter. And again, it's this open field that pops up in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and it's a really neat view.
So the possibility for expanding agriculture in the town.
Yep. Whether that's the trustees or somebody else, but I mean, they've been being hayed by Doug Steffen from Steve Farms. Who knows whether he's going to manage to keep going, but if those get lost, they're gone forever. A lot of concern about possibly losing dog access to Breakneck Hill and other places that you can walk dogs currently. That came up for us as well. More trail connections for running as well as walking. Community center, another indoor community center, particularly with a pool, as well as water access to the reservoir.
You guys do?
So that indoor rec center has water in it, and less of the big puddle that's already out there that we can't go in.
And so you're talking about specifically like swimming access?
Boating and swimming came up. And So both of those. And then the other thing was turf field access, maintaining access to sports fields, but specifically to the turf fields.
So expanding hours, expanding.
She didn't go into detail, she left, but I
Okay.
think, yes, turf is great, and making sure we don't lose that and maybe build more, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That,
Last but not least, this table. Do you have a
Okay,
spokesperson?
well, the advantage or the disadvantage of going last is that pretty much everything that we had on our list has been hit by somebody else, so we're done.
Yeah.
Oh, the only thing that we talked about was the threat of more 40B properties
Okay.
eating up the very few last places.
Right.
I'm sorry, your turn's over.
Next service. So one was someone mentioned the Harvard property, that they're no longer using the primary center, and was wondering if that's an option for thing would be they're richer than lots of developing places, so they can just give it to us. And the other property, I guess, talking about other land that could be farmed, is that area that was used to be Picasso Farm. And I don't know what's up with that. If someone
Still up in the air. I don't think they've decided what they're gonna do yet.
Put that as a place that needs to be protected.
Stony Brook might do that.
Can I make a comment on that? Just because I'm hearing a lot of places we'd like to protect, and I just want to call your attention to the fact that in the 1970s, we protected Breakneck Hill Conservation Land. It wasn't for another 30 years that we protected Chestnut Hill Farm. Since we wrote this plan, this is just by eye, so it's not perfect, but the 500 acres, this is just the wildlife habitat priorities, but it's a lot of our priority open space we had 7 years ago. And I X'd out, to the best of my ability, based on my knowledge, that what we've lost. Most of the dark blue is gone for development. Some of my X's might be a little bit too big, but basically, the point is that there's not a lot left. And this happened in 7 years. Right now, I know I've just seen 2 parcels that are for sale. One just came up yesterday, another 10 acres. And I would say it's not just the 40Bs, it's any development, which development is great and helps our town, but finding the parcels that we want to protect and working for it, to protect one takes a lot of work, and people have to get together and have a plan and help make that happen, or else, you know, a lot of those parcels you're talking about, parcels, they came out, I don't know if you know what Chapter 61 is. Property owners put it in there to protect it from, it gives them a reduced tax rate, and because they're keeping it open for farming or forestry or recreation. They don't choose to pull it out unless there's development coming down the road. And that recently we've lost a lot of parcels being pulled out of Chapter 61. The beautiful field on Chestnut Hill Road came out of Chapter 61, and now it's, there's plans in front of the planning board for a subdivision. That had prime farmland soil. I'm just making the point, you have a lot of ideas, but maybe after this meeting, people want to, you know, get together and talk about how do you actually make something happen. Because your Open Space Commission can't do it alone. The South Open Land Foundation can't do it alone. We need the, you know, all the people who want to see these things happen. And just what happens on all of the few parcels we have, more and more use. We have non-compatible uses, you know, crowding each other out. We really need to protect more land so people can have a place to do all of the things they want to do. So that's my pitch.
I know you guys may have a few more things you'd like to add to these, but I was hearing I know that views are important in the neighborhood, in the town, and I was wondering if maybe you guys could clarify which specific views those were?
Scenic views?
Yeah.
think I heard, was it from the stable, Chestnut Hill Farm? It was especially
Chestnut Hill Road.
Chestnut Hill
The
Road,
road.
okay.
Road and farm.
Okay.
But then around the back, I mean, a lot of people shortcut through Chestnut Hill Road going to the high school, but then coming back the other way, Old Northborough Road and Johnson Road are sort of the return line, because Chestnut Hill is
Yeah.
one way. And so that, and the back way up to Marlboro, and those are unprotected parcels that sort of make that same open field complex.
Okay. Does anyone else have particular like scenic views in the town that they especially fond of?
So a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Kind of fall, around all the reservoirs.
What's the one that you mentioned, Freddie, from Chestnut Hill Farm looking, I think, southwest toward 495, but like maybe in the vicinity of off Lover's Lane or Lynbrook? Back of the Beals Preserve? Yeah.
You're on Main
west of
Street,
there.
you see that hill that's the Beals Preserve and the forest and back?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not protected. So you think you're seeing this big swath of open land that's all protected, but the fields are, but the trees behind it. And that would look very different if that was all developed. So that would be a priority, I think. And you'd also said the Malay land.
The Malay Land.
You saying something?
The largest parcel of land is still Rizzo land. It's off of Pine Hill Road. It's privately owned, but it's.
Doesn't that have plans for development right now?
Not by 28 years. But I'm aware.
28, I believe so. That we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, 100 plus, yes.
Any other things that anybody would like to add to these specific lists? Okay, so maybe we can move on to our next section, which is kind of just like condensing ideas about goals of where you want to see Southborough headed. So maybe for the next 5 minutes or so, you guys can just talk amongst yourself and come up with some ideas, and then figure out some condensed goals that you'd like to see. Maybe a top 3 goals that you'd like to see happen within the next 7 years. And then we'll come back together in a few minutes.
Okay. All right, everyone, are you all ready to come back in? Can you share? Okay. So the reason we're hoping to kind of distill a list of goals is that it will help us when the working group come together to create the official list of goals in the OSRP, and then the 7-year action plan that will hopefully get all of these priorities that you've listed, get the ball rolling on all of them. So we'd like to distill it down to, hopefully we can kind of leave here with a top 3 that everyone in the room kind of agrees on. But in the meantime, we'd love to hear what all of you were discussing. Would any of the groups like to volunteer? Yeah, great.
Town officials who have open space on their priority list.
Great.
Yes.
Here.
Town
Okay.
officials who have open space on their.
Developers, being held responsible for following the open space bylaws.
Great.
Selecting open space strategically that we invest in or pursue.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, we talked about how important it is, and it's much more valuable if it's contiguous for the wildlife and.
So, from an ecological point of view, strategically?
Yeah. And then we had one extra, educating the community on the value of open space, because there was the comment that a lot of times people are saying, oh, well, we want development because that then will lower the tax rate, and that isn't true. So.
Great. Okay. Would anyone else like to? Yeah.
We just said we had 2. I forget what it was. We wanted a recreation center for Southborough, an indoor facility. Indoor facility, and then we just want to make sure Breakneck Hill doesn't get overtaken, and we still have dog walking and so forth with the trails open.
So making sure the trails and especially dog walking is still open at Breakneck Hill? Great.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we just wanted to make sure that there's consideration about parking for people who don't live within walking distance of the open spaces that exist,
Mm-hmm.
and signage, so that you know where they're going.
Great.
And I guess, yeah, it's in terms of acquiring or protecting more land, it was in line with what the other table said, except just to say that the Harvard property should really
Yeah.
be looked at, because apparently it's been on the town's radar screen for a long time, and so maybe more people need to express an interest in that.
Great, thank you. Would any other groups like to offer input?
A master plan for the athletic fields.
Okay. Athletic fields specifically?
What's that?
Specifically athletic fields?
Oh, got the
That says Doreen has something to share.
So, we are putting, the Recreation Commission is going to do a facility study for the organized recreational sports and look at our current facilities, look to see what we need, how we're using them, how we're scheduling them, do we have enough for the future, and so forth and so forth. So we hope to be done with that in the next months or so.
Months?
Yeah.
Some months.
Cracking away.
Do you guys have another one?
Did you have any more that you wanted
No,
to share?
sorry.
Okay. This table, did you want to share any priorities? Kind of already shared them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much said them.
Yep.
All right. Well, I guess that leads us into our wrapping up session. So we just have a few announcements, and then we can take any questions that you guys have. So we're going to be having our second open forum meeting, same time, same place, on March 3rd, which we would love to see everyone back for. We'll be kind of condensing everything that was happening today and coming up with a plan and sharing that, and sharing the goals. And then Sally has an announcement, and then Freddie has one after that.
Southborough Open Land Foundation is going to be presenting a series of programs related to beaver, because they have their own ideas about open space and how it should be used. And there's been a lot of beaver activity in town, flooding certain areas and causing some problems, but there's also ways to live with them very peacefully and so forth. So on February 23rd at the library at 7 o'clock, there will be a program by Mike Callahan of Beaver Solutions. So we hope to see many of you there at that program.
And the Open Space and Preservation Commission has 2 events coming up. On March 20th, we're hosting with the trustees of reservation a family Winter Wonderland Day at Chestnut Hill Farm. We'll be having sledding if there's snow, and bring your snowshoes and skis. I guess fingers crossed. And if not, we'll be doing a walk, and that's February 20th in the morning. Look for it on around town for the exact time. I'm not sure yet. And then the other event will be on the 27th. We'll be having a winter tracking event, and that's we'll have a tractor coming in, and we'll be at Breakneck Hill and walking around with him looking for tracks to see what kind of animals are using the property. And again, details to be coming. It will be on the blog and publicized on the website, and I'm sure my friend Doreen will send it out with recreation to let you all know. Thank you.
Does anyone have any last questions?
Thank you all so much for coming this evening and for all of your input. To see you at the next evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And grab your refreshments.